September 7th, 1996, Las Vegas, Nevada. The lights of Las Vegas Strip were glowing and thousands of people poured out of the MGM after one of the biggest boxing matches of the year. Inside one black BMW sat two of the most powerful figures in hip-hop. One was controversial record executive who ran the most feared label in music. The other, the biggest rap star in the game. Minutes later, a white Cadillac pulled up beside him. Gunshots rang out into the night. In that moment, the most powerful empire in hip-hop history began to crumble. But the story of Death Row Records didn't start in Las Vegas. It started years earlier with ambition, power, and a vision that would change everything. Let's rewind, baby. In the late 1980s, hip-hop was exploding across America. But one city ruled the culture, New York. Most of the biggest record labels, radio stations, and music executives were located on the East Coast. But out in Los Angeles, a different sound was beginning to rise. At the center of that movement was a young producer named Dr. Dre. As a member of NWA, he had already helped create some of the most influential rap music ever recorded. Their music was raw, controversial, and brutally honest about life in Compton. But despite the success of NWA, Dre was frustrated. The money and control over the music not in his hands. Their label, Ruthless Records, was run by Eazy-E and manager Jerry Heller. Dre wanted ownership. He wanted power. And that's when he crossed paths with a man who would soon become one of the most feared figures in the music industry, Suge Knight.
Suge tried to destroy my record company with the help of others. Dre.
Suge for taking Dre, and it was much money and energy and work that Eazy put into starting Ruthless.
Had to move aside for a minute and do my own thing, make a little bit of Dre's money, you know what I'm saying? Ren is doing his own solo thing, and everybody's gonna get paid.
Suge Knight wasn't your typical record executive. He had worked as a bodyguard for celebrities and professional athletes. He was physically imposing, highly connected, and understood something very important about the music industry. Power wasn't just about contracts. It was about presence. Together, Dr. Dre and Suge Knight founded Death Row in 1991. And from the beginning, their mission was simple: dominate hip-hop. In 1992, Death Row released an album that would change rap music forever. That album was The Chronic. Their production was unlike anything the world had ever heard before. Smooth funk samples, heavy bass lines, laid-back rhythms. The sound would later be known as G-Funk, and it defined the entire West Coast sound. But the album also introduced a new voice to the world, a young rapper with a smooth flow and a laid-back personality. That rapper was Snoop Dogg. Songs like Nothing But a G Thing.
1, 2, 3 into the 4. Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre is at the door.
And Let Me Ride became millions. And suddenly, the West Coast wasn't just competing with New York, it was taking over. With the success of The Chronic, the spotlight quickly shifted to Snoop Dogg. In 1993, he released the debut album, Doggystyle, one of the hardest hip-hop albums to ever come out, for real, for real. The impact was immediate. The album debuted at #1 on the charts and sold nearly 1 million copies in its first week. Can't nobody do that like Snoop did back in the day, man. 1 million in a week, though? Man, that's crazy. They had tracks like Gin and Juice come off that album.
With so much drama in the LBC, it's kind of hard being Snoop D-O-double-G, but
Who am I? What's my name?
From the depths of the sea, back to the block, Snoop Doggy Dogg, funky at the
Can't forget Murder Was the Case.
Dear God, I wonder, can you save me? I can't die, my boo-boo's about to have my baby.
They all became hip-hop classics. At that moment, Death Row Records was unstoppable. They had the biggest producer, the hottest rapper, and the most powerful executive in the industry. But behind the platinum records, a different reputation was forming.
You know where the fuck I'm from? It's Bumpton, nigga.
As Death Row's power grew, stories about the label began circulating around the music industry. Stories of intimidation.
The first one, it sounds like he threatened your life. In the second one, it sounds like you have no problem with him. What's the true story?
The true story is I'm not putting no target on my forehead, and I'm not coming out on TV and saying anything bad about Suge Knight when that horse has been dead for a long time.
Stories of threats, stories of deals that were made under pressure. With every rumor was true or exaggerated, one thing became clear. Suge Knight had built a reputation that made people think twice before crossing him. Death Row Records wasn't just respected, it was feared, and that reputation only made the label more powerful.
I'd like to tell Tupac to keep his guards up. We ride with him.
In 1995, Death Row made its most dramatic move yet. One of the most talented and controversial rappers in the world joined the label. His name was Tupac Shakur. At the time, Tupac was in prison after legal troubles threatened to derail his career.
Got into the head of a California state judge and blew it off?
No. No, you sound like the COINTELPRO. The COINTELPRO.
COINTELPRO makes us paranoid.
Do you know if he's ever killed anybody?
Yes, I do.
How do you know? Were you a witness to a killing that he committed?
I'll ask the question.
Suge Knight stepped in and offered to pay his bail in exchange for him to sign the Death Row. Rumors heard he signed it on some toilet paper. Tupac accepted. Within months of his release, Tupac went straight to work. In 1996, he released the double album, All Eyez on Me. Classic record. The album was massive. Tracks like California Love.
Out on bail, fresh out of jail, California dreaming. Soon as I step on the scene, I'm here screaming, fiending for
Ambitions as a rider.
I'm a straight rider. I don't wanna fuck with me. Got the police busting at me.
Two of America's most wanted.
Oh shit. You done fucked up, man.
How Do You Want It? Can't See Me. I ain't mad at you. I mean, and I could be here forever track listing, but I ain't gonna do it. It dominated radios across the country. At that moment, Death Row Records had the two biggest stars in hip-hop, Snoop Dogg and Tupac. The empire was at its peak, but outside the studio, tensions was rising. During the mid-1990s, hip-hop's most infamous rivalry began to grow. On the East Coast, the Notorious B.I.G. was dominating the charts under Sean Combs. P. Diddy.
I want to give a shout out to my borough. Brooklyn is up in here, representing. You know what I mean?
On the West Coast, Death Row stood as their biggest rival.
This bullshit about the East Coast and the West Coast started when we went out to New York to do the Source Awards. And
about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the records, dancing. Come to Death Row.
East Coast ain't got no love for Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and Death Row. Y'all don't love us. Well, let it be known then. We know y'all East Coast.
These tracks were released.
First off, fuck your bitch in the clique you claim.
Interviews turned hostile.
Ain't no other record company out there that sold as many records as we did. We outsold Bad Boy, LaFaze, every black record label out there, we outsold them in 1 year. And they don't even want to buy our record, but they gotta buy our record because we represent the street. That all these people talking about an East Coast, West Coast war, they like the Judas was to Jesus. They only here to cause confusion. All these weak rappers, Nas, all these suckers, they battling off of East and West like this is a game. This ain't no game.
Fans began choosing sides, and the media turned the rivalry into a national drama.
Out of jail, Sean Puffy Combs was about to become, I would say, the East Coast version of Suge Knight with Bad Boy Records. You know, his first big artist was the Notorious B.I.G.
Tupac became one of the loudest voices in the conflict, and the tension between the two coasts began spiraling out of control. And I can remember them days, man. You know what I'm saying? I was just a teenager when them East Coast, West Coast things was going on, man. But you know, I had to ride with the West Coast. That's where I'm from, baby. September 7th, 1996, Las Vegas. After attending the Mike Tyson fight, Tupac and Suge Knight left the MGM Grand in the black BMW. As they drove down the Las Vegas Strip, another car pulled up beside them. Gunshots rang out. Tupac was hit multiple times.
There was blood coming everywhere. And my concern was him. So you hit? He said, I'm hit. So I said, I'm gonna get you to a hospital right now.
6 days later, he died. The world was stunned, and Death Row Records lost its biggest star. But the tragedy was only the beginning of the label's downfall.
That was like terrible loss because he was a very talented person, you know. One of the most talented people I've worked with, you know, in the studio. He was real fast in the studio and knew exactly what he wanted, you know.
I saw Pac 20 minutes before he got shot. I saw Pac in Vegas, about to get into the car. He's coming out the hotel. And we walked off, and we got in the cab, and they got into Bentleys and all that other stuff. And, you know, we went on to another party, and 20 minutes later, we heard Pac got shot.
I was at Warren G's house in the living room. I think we was playing a video game, and we kept getting a whole bunch of calls and pages.
He was trying to talk. He did want to talk, but he didn't actually verbalize any words.
Wish that my son was here and that he could go and lie down in my bed and come out of my room.
After Tupac's death, Death Row Records began collapsing. Dr. Dre had already left to start the Aftermath Entertainment. Soon after, Snoop was out too. Legal troubles continued to follow, Suge Knight eventually sending him to prison. Without its biggest artists and leadership, the empire collapsed. By 2006, Death Row Records filed for bankruptcy. The label that once ruled hip-hop had fallen. 4 years, it seemed like Death Row was nothing more than a legendary chapter in rap history. But the story wasn't over yet. For more than a decade, the Death Row brand changed hands several times. The once dominant label was eventually owned by MNRK Music Group, backed by investment firm Blackstone Incorporated. Many fans believe Death Row will remain in the relic of the past until 2022. That's when one of the label's original stars stepped forward to reclaim the empire. That artist was Snoop Dogg.
Buys Death Row Records. Let's talk about it. On February 10th, 2022, it was announced that Snoop Dogg acquired Death Row Records and is back with the label that he grew on.
I own Death Row, so I do what the fuck I want to do. For about a year and a half, 2 years, I was just trying to get my masters. All I wanted was doggy style.
In February of 2022, Snoop Dogg officially purchased Death Row Records from MNRK Music Group. While the exact price was never publicly disclosed, industry estimates placed the deal at tens of millions of dollars, including the brand and parts of the label's historic catalog. For Snoop, the moment was bigger than business. Nearly 3 decades earlier, Death Row had launched his career with the release of Doggystyle. Now, the artist who once represented the label had become its owner. Snoop described Death Row as a culturally significant brand with untapped value. But he didn't just want to preserve the past, he wanted to rebuild the future. Under Snoop Dogg's leadership, Death Row began exploring new technologies, digital ownership, and innovative ways for artists to release music. The label that once symbolized the chaos of the 1990s was now entering a new era, and for the first time in decades, Death Row Records had a future again. Death Row Records once ruled hip-hop like an unstoppable empire. It created legends, defined the sound of the West Coast, and changed the music industry forever. But power, controversy, and violence eventually brought the empire crashing down. For years, it seemed like the story had ended, until one of its own came back to rewrite the ending. Today, that same label that once launched Snoop Dogg's career is now owned by Snoop Dogg. From artist to icon to owner. The rise, the fall, and the rebirth. This is the legacy of Death Row Records, man.
After the fight, Tupac was still in that mode.
Hey. When Tyson get in the ring, he knock motherfuckers out. Well, that's what Tupac gonna do.
I know everybody's seen the logo at the bottom of the screen on the front page. That's right, baby. Alky water. Now y'all can scan that QR code and make sure y'all test some of the crispness water out there, man. Tell them the front page sent you, and it's how we keep everybody freshly hydrated on the show, baby. Alky.
Front Page Podcast. Front Page Podcast. Front Page Podcast, 104 episodes in. I'm just warming up.